Fake Safety Podcast with Vance and Bart.
It's a trap. There's no comfort fitting in a fake safety that no one believes in.
Welcome to episode 1 of the what were we going to call this?
The Bob and Tom Show.
The Bob and Tom Show. I'm Bob and Tom. So I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in the Ukraine, and they were like, hey, dude, why are you all freaking out about this Russia stuff? And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, aren't they taking up arms and bordering you right now? And they're like, yes, but they have been for like 4 years. Why are you freaking out about it now? And I didn't know what to say because I hadn't read the news that morning, so I didn't know what my opinion was. What's yours?
Well, how far back do we want to go? Do we want to go back to the Obama coup days, or I mean, because that really frames what's going on, so I think we really should go back there.
I know you said Obama coup, but it sounded almost like you said Obama Q, like it's a barbecue sauce named after Barack Obama.
Which would have been awesome. Side note, I lived in Columbia, South Carolina for a little while, and we had a convenience store near my house, gas station, called the Obama store. And it was like his campaign sign kind of logo on it. A big lollipop sign with all the prices of the gas.
Did they sell Obama Q sauce?
Oh, they should have. They really should have. No, they didn't. And then they got in trouble because they wouldn't let homeless people use their bathroom, and they called it a racist store. It was in the newspaper.
Which I still haven't read. So again, whatever your opinion is, let's go back to the Obama coup. But for those who are listening at home and furiously typing away in the chat, what was the Obama coup?
Well, there was what they call a democratic election in Ukraine, and CIA tried to drop off duffel bags, but they didn't get there fast enough, so the wrong guy won. He was friendly to Russia, like many Ukrainians are and were, especially ones in bordering towns of Russia tend to be a lot more friendly to Russia because they do a lot of commerce, right? That whole free trade thing, how it brings people together so they don't have to fight. Anyway, there were movements away from the UN. So Obama, CIA, U.S. Secret Service, intelligence agencies, whatever you want to call it, right? They military coup and put in a different ruler or president or whatever you want to call prime minister. I don't know what they call him there, right? But and this was the Nazi party, not like, oh, Trump's a Nazi, or not even like David Duke is a Nazi, because he's not. He was more of a Klan kind of guy. I'm talking proudly wearing the swastika. Lots of them were descendants of actual Nazis.
And just to make sure we're talking about the right side here, you're saying the leader they installed was the Nazi.
Was a Nazi, yes. So this didn't go over too well with bordering towns in Ukraine, cities, whatever. And of course the Nazis, they don't like Russia, and they were trying to shut down the port of Crimea to Russian merchants, and it had always been a friendly, like, okay, we pay our dues, but as long as you keep it open. So Russia and the people there didn't want to shut it down because they were making money off of Russia, right? So Russia just basically said, "Hey, this is ours now," and everybody there was like, "Okay." There was really no invasion, but they called it an invasion, right?
Like January 6th.
Right. Later, the people elected somebody. The Nazis are no longer in power. Somebody that's a little more lighter on the hate Russia, I think the guy is now. But he's definitely with America too. For one, he knows not to not be because he'll get booted for a Nazi if he, you know what I mean? I mean, is anybody moving in that position has learned their lesson. So there's been talks about Ukraine entering the UN, and there's been a clear line drawn in the sand by Russia. Uh, and we need to just quickly mention that back when the Berlin Wall fell, there was an agreement between the UN and Russia. The UN would not move any closer than there to the borders of Russia. We will not move into any countries that border you. But look at Poland. We've broken that promise over and over and over again, and openly had presidents say, "Let's do it anyway. Russia won't do anything about it." Okay, so we've aggressed upon them, and we're talking about an old ruler in Putin, right? That has turned the other cheek many times to this border aggression upon his country. And at some point, he's got to make a stand on something, right? Because you can only be slapped so many times before your people are like, "You're not going to do anything for us," right? So he has made what I consider a pretty reasonable uh, line in the sand, being that you will not put SAM missile launchers on our borders, because not because of the SAM missiles, but because we have another missile that's a lot more deadly, invasive, whatever, um, that can be launched from that same platform. And we've used that as a trick in many other situations. Oh, it's just SAMs, right? But he said, you will not put those there, and you will not let Ukraine into the UN. This will not happen. It's a clear violation. All right. I will. He didn't even say he will invade. He said, if you put those launchers there, we will destroy them. Yeah. He didn't say that he was going to invade. Like, they may have to go in there to destroy them, but there was no indication that he would stay. And this is, it may not seem like a big point, but he has, there was another town that he went in and protected the people of that town against an invading, an internal rebel force that was killing people or whatever. They had went into a town on one of their bordering countries. I think it was in Ukraine, but it was a poor outskirts town. They protected the people, and then they backed back out. The people asked to be brought into Russia, and he was like, "No, you're poor. I'm not. All it would be is another drain on our economy." So no. So he's not out to take over land for merely taking over land. and there's not a lot of places in Ukraine that he really wants.
For that protection that he afforded them, how is that different than like the Yakuza? It's offering protection that they may not have necessarily asked for,
Right.
and it was maybe for some other nefarious gain because it wasn't altruistic, right?
Yeah. In this circumstance, as easy as it was to protect them, I think it was more like we were saying earlier, Putin has looked pretty weak because he's been quite turn the other cheek kind of guy his whole presidency. He's really not a warmonger, even though he's portrayed that way, right? Not that he's not a bad guy. He's done really bad shit, but wanting a war with another country is not really one of his things that he seems to want. What I think it was is like those bordering country towns. He's got bordering country towns. Some of the people in that town are probably family, right? It looks good on him as the ruler when he can protect. Russia gets an easy win, right? And protected
it's the same
some
kind
of,
of posturing as he's doing on the
Right.
international scale now, right?
Right. That's what it seemed to be because it was a very publicized in there. At least the things that I've read was like very heroic move, and that they used that propaganda of that, and I don't think there was a bullet fired. It was just their presence, right?
You talk about the UN position and post-Berlin Wall.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're getting one side of the story there. So if we can grant the UN and the states and the larger narrative as much as they've given us and say, yes, Putin is a dictator, does awful things, terrorist, whatever you want to call him, wouldn't that mean that we don't negotiate with terrorists? So this whole idea that we made an agreement post-Berlin Wall doesn't hold water because we don't negotiate with terrorists.
I guess it would as loosely if we define terrorist. Yeah, I guess so. I don't like what. At today's U.S. Definition of terrorism is, somebody farting on Nancy Pelosi's desk. I don't think Putin's done anything that disrespectful to the U.S., but like,
I don't even think he's been here in a while. So
yeah, but he looked a little annoyed when he pressed that reset button when Hillary Clinton had it.
that was one of my favorite episodes of Foreign Affairs.
Was it?
I liked the Benghazi season, but
Yeah.
that one was pretty good.
I guess you can call him a terrorist because we just call anybody who we need to spend money to intimidate a terrorist nowadays. There has to be, they don't have to do anything, right?
Yeah, and while I agree with you on that point, I think just for sake of argument, let's say that he legitimately is a terrorist, even in the conventional sense.
Okay.
Does that grant us the ability to consider our agreements with him null and void?
Sure. Yeah, I guess, but it doesn't change the fact that we're the aggressor. If we're aggressing upon somebody who's not aggressing upon us, then we're still the bad guys, no matter what agreements you have. I'm not saying, just saying that we're the bad guys there doesn't mean that he's a good guy. He's not a fucking terrorist, but he's a piece of shit. He's done really bad things to his people. So I don't understand why we would give more power to the people who do really bad things to us so they can do some mean things to him because he's done some mean things to the people where he lives. It's just
Well, how is that different than him protecting a neighboring town if we pretend to protect the Ukraine?
I don't think it is different. It just, I mean, except that, I mean, we are using Ukraine to aggress upon him for nefarious reasons, which I'm sure he was, had some pretty nefarious reasons for his choices too. But like, I don't see why saying he'd done it too would make it okay for us to do this to anybody and to have sanctions against the people that there's tons of economic models that have already shown that sanctions against countries hurt the people in that country. They don't hurt the rulers. There's tons of models that have shown that.
I think you're just describing war, right? Like,
Yeah.
war doesn't really have all that many casualties at the top, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of front lines. So whether we do that economically or through literal fighting, it's the same. So I think your point stands there. I guess the piece I'm just trying to get behind is if we find that he's a bad guy, a terrorist, we'll say, and like you said, he has done very bad things and not done very bad things externally, right? He's done very bad things to his people. So that means if he is to occupy other areas and include other areas in his people, that means he's going to do more bad things to even more bad people. I know that's an oversimplification,
Yeah.
but it's one that holds water to some degree, right?
Yeah, a
That
little
if
bit.
we're trying to protect them from becoming part of that sandbox, if we've agreed not to enter his sandbox, okay, and we've had that agreement and we hold that up. But if he's trying to expand the size of his sandbox by the same mechanism of imperialism that Great Britain did many years ago, by just occupying that land, we see how that ends up. So,
But he's not trying to do that until we're aggressing on those borders. He hasn't had any. He's made no attempt to do that without an aggression upon him, ever.
so your case is one for entrapment.
Right. So to defend himself, if you're putting your weapons right on his border and pointing them at him and just being like, no, we won't put weapons there. And he's like, but I can see them. They're right here. And all these people are like, we don't feel safe. Like, what are you doing about this? As a ruler, he's like, okay, let's pretend like having a ruler's legitimate for a second. Ugh. Right? But it's disgusting. But you want that ruler to be able to protect you. I mean, that's the one thing that you think they're there for, right? If he can't protect you, then why am I been paying all this money? Right? So then he gets booted. So he doesn't want that to happen. You can't just openly, brazenly defy him in front of his people without there being negative consequences. Not just to us or to people in Ukraine, but like to his own people. Let's say his own people do decide to have a violent uprising against him, right? Then more people are going to die. That didn't have to. We started all that. I think the right move would have been to befriend Russia not get mad at them because they built a pipeline when we decided to stop ours, because our government's like, oh, private company, you can't build a pipeline. And their government's like, build, make money, build, make money. You know, the fact that our free market government is telling private companies what to do, and their so-called communist government is doing less of that, doesn't make them a bad guy.
So, for the people who are still with us,
Yeah.
I would imagine the question on all of their minds would be, okay, then, we started aggressing and placing these weapons there. Why did we do that, and why now?
Well, there's two reasons for this. Two obvious reasons. I'm sure there's a bunch of other little reasons. So,
Is one of them cabin fever? We've been locked down for so long we had to get out.
right. That is actually that's what the summary of it all is.
Oh, sorry, did I skip to the
Yeah,
end too
you
quickly?
did.
I'm sorry.
So, all right, good night, guys.
This has been the Bob and Tom Show.
That's right. So the two most obvious reasons why I see that we're doing this is right now we're having high inflation rates. There's a lot of unrest is the right word in the U.S. I think right way to say
I'd
that.
say so, yeah.
Government approval ratings are very low. Biden's approval ratings really low. And when I say government approval ratings, I do mean government. I can't tell you how many new people I walk by and I tell them I'm an anarchist when we're talking government, and I tell them things that I like and reasons why I don't like the government, and then I throw in that I'm an anarchist, and I don't get this. I get, oh, yeah, fuck the government, kind of thing. It happens to me all the time now. So there's a very strong anti-government sentiment across the United States right now. So they have to have a boogeyman to blame all these problems on that's creating this, right? It's a government school 101. If you learn how to rule, like, this is one of the things you have to learn, is when you have the inevitable, when you're stealing money from people, you have crashes and whatnot, and people get mad, you have to find a boogeyman. So we found one. I mean, if you go back to the first reports of Russia building before Christmas, the troops along the border, how they were just more and more troops were building up there. The first report, the Ukrainian response was, no, they're not. And then the U.S. offered, millions of dollars in weapons and stuff like that to Ukraine for this, to defend against this buildup. And then Ukrainians were like, the government was like, oh, you mean those Russian troops? Yeah, they're building right there. And then the story changed, right? So, we've doubled, tripled, quadrupled the amount of military money that we're pouring into Ukraine. Ukraine's going to go along with any of it now, right? They're like, oh yeah, tons, just, we're scared to death, right? And so this is created, so you have Russia, bad guy, right? So now anything that's going wrong, we can be like, oh, well, that's because you have to make sacrifices when the war is at your front door, right? You have to prepare. So this is the reason why inflation rates, well, you have to have that boogeyman to blame your problems on. Second issue is we pulled out of Afghanistan. By the way,
Thank you, Biden.
Yeah, I'm sorry to all the right wingers listening, but everybody says Biden pulled out, and it was a blunder and whatnot. He did well. They did make mistakes coming out of there, but I think a lot of the mistakes they just didn't care. They wanted to make mistakes. They wanted to make it look as bad as possible. The military brass that was pulling out of there because they didn't want to leave. And the biggest mistake we made, but was not stopping the military action there and actually blowing up some kids and some innocent people on the way out. But the 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 retreat or pull out of Afghanistan was a disaster the moment we set troops there. That was unavoidable. It was always going to be ugly, and it was always going to end that way. So,
I don't know. I mean, think about that time we pulled out of the driveway. Point taken.
where I was getting at with that is there's a lot of people who make a lot of money by building weapons, selling weapons, designing things that don't work and selling them to the government. And they couldn't sell as many because of Afghanistan. We had this problem where we left all of them for the Taliban, and then they were like, "Oh, well, we got all these parts to fix them." Like, and the U.S. is like, "Well, we don't have them anymore." Like, "Oh, you got to buy more." Well, we got to find a reason to buy more, right? So, Russia, right? Ukraine, and then now, because all these politicians, how did they get elected? Through Because they have money to run their campaigns. This money to run their campaigns is from these people who make a lot of money off of government stuff, and they're mad. They want to sell weapons. They want to sell stuff that doesn't work. They want to sell $80 screwdrivers to the military, right? Um, and these politicians are scrambling to find a reason to buy them because they want that payout at the end for being a good politician for them, that retirement job or whatever. And this was a way to do it. Those are the two biggest reasons why I see this happening. And I found that the right wingers who hate to hear the pulling out of Afghanistan thing and being a good thing, because I explain it in a monetary way to them, tend to get it anyway, which is fucking promising, man.
It really is, because this isn't too hard or too big a pill to swallow for my left wingers. We're not big on regime change or military interventionism, so this isn't really our game.
It's not your game, but that fake humanitarian aspect of it tends to suck some of you guys in.
Yeah, we can be convinced that it's not an attack, it's a response, it's self-defense, which we'll never allow Florida to use, but we will allow the Ukraine to use using our weapons.
Right.
So I know we'll get booted off of YouTube if we say that we're giving legal or financial advice. So just so you know, this is not legal or financial advice, but it sounds like everyone should be buying up Lockheed Martin stock.
I don't know.
No?
Stock scares me. I don't like stock. Because it's all, it's the fucking government bureaucrats' word away from changing, But yeah, I mean.
But don't you just sell the day that we pull out?
You do, but I don't know, man. The anti-government sentiment's pretty fucking hard right now, man. They might not win this one either. I mean, Fauci lost. Fauci doesn't fucking lose, man. He's been rocking and rolling for a long time, winning.
Teflon Tony.
Yeah, he got some shit stuck on his ass. Yeah, he fucking sucks, man. Like he's gonna die anyway, but like he doesn't have any credit anymore. I'm hearing like the leftist of the what was that chick that was on Bill Maher the other day? Super leftist COVID regime just spokesman, and she was like, "This is BS." And she was like, "These people, we got all this. I'm not doing this anymore." She was even she. Of course, she spins it like she was never really wrong. It's funny how they can never admit they're wrong. They're like, I'm not a Trumper or anything, but you sit back and you go, well, let's pretend the Trumpers were the ones who got this right first, not the libertarians. Wouldn't you be like, wait, what were you looking at that where you knew this was BS all the way back then? Instead of going, I'm not one of those crazy people like that, but they were right. Like, what the fuck? But you never said they were right. You're just like, but all this stuff, and it's all the shit they were saying all that time ago. And the Trumpers didn't have it right either. Like, us libertarians got that shit right first. And not even all of us. I know I fucking did, though. I was running red lights. Day one, lockdown. Going to work.
I still don't think I have it right.
No?
No.
You didn't get COVID right? I got it pretty good after PorkFest. I got it really right.
I was following Q for the longest time.
Oh, tell me, did you really follow the Q stuff? Or at all?
Well, that's why I bought all that GameStop.
I don't think you know what Q is.
Isn't this just what Gen Z calls the internet?
What was it? The Q was one of the speaking spells on the Reno 911 that had gotten salt water in it. That shit was funny as hell. If you haven't seen the Reno 911 QAnon thing, I'm sorry. Spoiler alert, too late.
We can edit that out.
Can we?
Well, if you look at the Venn diagram of fake safety listeners and Reno 911 fans who are at least a few episodes behind, it's just a circle.
So, besides the Ukrainian BS, have you noticed the stock market falling pretty hard over the weekend? Have you followed any of that?
Not as hard as it did in 2020, but
Right.
yes.
With all the extra spending in the military spending, that's what makes this a little odd, a little different, right? The ramp up in the spending, normally that boosts the stock market, right? But it seems to just be slowing down the inevitable now.
Well, I guess we didn't time it right. We probably should have gotten this whole military invasion stuff a bit faster. But let's be real. If we go back and follow the patterns of every previous administration, they usually do it on election years, right? So every 2 years you kind of have the thing. So something like this in any other time would be fine to reserve until 2022. But I feel like during lockdown and pandemic or whatever you want to call this era, things were moving a little bit faster. Everyone's kind of living on the internet, and information, good, bad, or wrong, is moving a bit faster.
Yeah.
So that 2-year cycle is too long. You can't have someone in a position of leadership that's not leading for 2 years anymore. You used to be able to get 2 4-year terms, call it a day. But I think if they had rolled out this Ukraine thing 2021, we might not be in this situation.
No, you'd have been kicking the can down the road further.
Wait, are you saying this money's not real?
Yeah. Man, this really is episode 1, huh?
Again, YouTube, this is not legal or financial advice. Is anyone at YouTube still listening?
Maybe. If they're not working on their missile guidance system using Google Maps and whatnot. It's such a hippie fucking company image to be such a warmongering company.
I just appreciate the loyalty. I'm just glad they're not using Apple Maps.
Yeah. Didn't they just like merge? Didn't they just end up buying Google data? They didn't merge, but they bought didn't they buy something? I remember something happened between Google and Maps on my iPhone around iPhone 6 days.
You might have been thinking about Google buying Waze, but I thought you liked all of that economic collaboration.
Oh, I do between companies. I just don't between government and So once the government is involved in the company, it's just a fascist company now. It's not real anymore. There's nothing not like one. Okay, so every company has the government involved in it, but I'm saying to the state, to the point that the state is the bigger customer than the customer. I don't care anymore.
Well, what if I polish the floors for the local school?
I don't know. What if?
Does that mean that my floor polishing business is the most fascist it can be because it's our only customer?
Well, if the government tells you to jump, you'll probably jump as high as they need you to.
If they pay me enough.
It's just like the fucking union people who will believe whatever history revision BS they tell them because it's the person who pays them. That's the incentive. I'm just over. I'm not gonna sit here as a libertarian and say like, it's a private company, so it's not a private company. When Facebook and the Twitter guys and all them were in front of the Congress, they were saying like, if you don't fix these problems that we don't like about your platform, we're gonna take them from you. Okay, so like at that point, you're just doing exactly what the state tells you to do. You don't have a choice. So I don't have to agree with what you're doing if you're doing the state's bidding. Do I feel bad that the state took your company? Yeah. That's what I'm just sitting here fighting for while you're censoring my shit.
It's a trap. There's no